colonization affected all of us, and it's still affecting all of us. The same things that are happening are just happening in a slightly different font in other countries. And there was a lot of self-gaslighting going on. If like I noticed a thing, I was like, okay, no, I don't think that's what's happening. No, and then like years later, I'm like, oh, that was racist. Oh my gosh. It could have primed me a lot more to overvalue, validation from a white person than from a person of color.
Welcome to another episode of Colorful. I am Sena Zungu here with my intergenerational, interracial bestie, Stacy Jane, unpacking race, privilege, and living life in full color in South Africa. What it do, Stace?
What it do? Is that like one of those Gen Z?
How are you? No.
Is it? Oh, sorry, for my millennial. I said, oh, how are you? Did you just? I am so great. Yes. I'm so great. I'm excited about today, honestly. I'm also excited because we recently celebrated 1 year of Colorful. And I know in our lives, it's wild. Like, we've grown so much. We've had amazing conversations. We've unpacked some really uncomfortable truths. We've debated a lot. And honestly, there's just been so much chaos behind the scenes. So the fact that we are here today is just like very heart-filling. So exactly, right? And so during the times when we're not spiraling, we are just embracing the mess and the fact that sometimes we are pretty bad at keeping it all together. And we've kind of just begrudgingly accepted that is our strength, right? Being bad at being, living life.
Okay, Stace, now that you've completely outed our business that we are neurodivergent and chaotic, I'm excited to welcome a woman who knows a thing or two about being good at being bad. This badass chick, see what I did there? Is a powerhouse actor, filmmaker, storyteller, comedian, and viral sensation, Celine Tshika. Welcome to Colorful.
Hey, hello.
Yay, it's so good to have you, Celine. And before we kind of get into our big interview with you, we want to start with what I know is coming. We love we love the color red, and we've got this thing going where we like to paint our one hand of nails red. Red for us is our brand color, but it's a symbol of being bold and courageous and having uncomfortable conversations. Plus also, as you come to know us, you'll know that Sena and I just do it all for the plot. So that is it. One hand of red nails. Love it. Okay. So you've got some nail polish there?
I do, and I have clear nails here. I have a blank canvas.
Ooh,
so
Perfect.
And I have my nail polish here. It's a bit dark, but I like this kind of maroon, hectic red. Yes, it feels bold to me.
So amazing. Okay, Celine, I will let you do that. But you are one of the most endearing comics in the country because of, honestly, your relatable humor. And we'll talk more about your latest stand-up special, Bad African, in this interview. But in the spirit of we listen, we don't judge, we're going to go around and talk about what we are all good at being bad at. Okay? So I'm going to start. Stacey, you'll go second. Okay? I am really good at being bad at handling the admin in my life. And case in point, I may or may not still use my green ID book.
I've seen you walking around with that green ID.
This is the part we say we listen, we don't judge, guys.
Okay, sure. Definitely not judging, just listening. Okay, what am I good at being bad at? I have a tendency to start a sentence and then forget what I want to say at the end of it. So I'm really good at starting sentences. I'm not so great at ending them.
Celine, you're up.
Ooh, so many things. Which one to choose? Okay. I am good at being bad at just general, being an adult and not a child. And in the way of making sure I get my balanced meals. That is what I'm very bad at because I bake. I could just bake a little brownie and it'd be yeah, it's breakfast. That's fine. I don't understand why I need to go and have a whole, minerals and vitamins. For what reason? I don't understand why it can't just be a brownie and that's fine.
That is so relatable. So relatable, Stace. I remember telling you the story when there were donuts. We walked into a meeting, an early morning meeting, and there were donuts everywhere. And I said, the perks of being an adult is that you can have donuts for breakfast.
No, you really
cons of being an adult is that you can have donuts for breakfast.
No, 100%. I
I can
am
eat this
in
whole
some
cake.
ways, yeah, in some ways, just like living my childhood dream. Like I can actually just have a brownie and no one can say no, but then that's also a problem.
Exactly. Like
So,
I can eat a whole cake, but is eating
yeah.
a whole cake really good for me?
But is that like the best thing for me?
Like I'm hearing girl dinners. I'm hearing that.
Oh, so
Yeah.
many gold
Oh,
dinners. Oh my
Girls
gosh,
enough.
love a gold dinner. Okay, I have my one
Yay!
hand
Everybody close
very
here.
up the
nice.
camera.
Woo! Yes.
Amazing,
Or
amazing.
I even filed my nails this week, guys. I'm trying. I'm trying.
You are so
You are
prepped.
the adults. Like you
Woo!
are
Look,
premium adulting. Your grooming is premium adulting.
I had exactly one salad this week and I filed my nails. So I'm like,
You
what
are
else do I
killing it.
need?
Overachiever. Okay.
Okay, so now that we are a little bit like we've set the scene about how we are all pretty good at being bad at things. I guess let's kind of get into this, right? So because Bad African is your latest stand-up show, and so I guess actually let me just set some context. So our strategist Sarah, she attended your event in Cape Town, and she just wouldn't stop talking about it. So can you give us like a little bit about what Bad African is, and maybe the journey that you went through to put it together?
Sure. So it is my debut stand-up show, my 1 hour solo show, and yeah, it's not kind of, it is about identity mostly, and it's about like just I'm an immigrant, so I was born in Congo and I grew up in Johannesburg, and yeah, just about like what do I identify as, throughout my childhood and becoming an adult, and what are the expectations that like parents and ancestors had on us, also in the context of colonization and living in like quote unquote post-colonial Africa, how it's quite difficult to find that identity and how if I'm doing it right. So that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm being bad at being an African. I'm not doing the things that I should be doing. Like there's this ideal of the perfect African child, and I am not that. And it's just about how to deal with that and how to like find my own way of I guess making myself proud and living in a way that just makes sense to me. Yeah, so that's what I discuss in Bad African.
And that's what's so relatable to me, because I think from a sort of coming from an African family where it's like a Zulu African family growing up in KZN,
Yeah.
I always had this, idea that what is it to be the model Zulu girl, but also the
Yes.
model Zulu girl navigating like predominantly white spaces and times. It's very
Yeah.
confusing, right? So I guess what I love about Bad African and your stance on it is that you illustrate that there is not one way to be an African.
Yeah.
But I just want you to touch on that Congolese upbringing in SA. How was that household like, and how did that shape your early years?
Ooh. Like growing up Congolese, like just in any diaspora, there is this notion of like being in two worlds. You go home and there's one culture, and then you go out into the world and there's another. But when that out in the world is also not one singular thing, I think that's what makes it complicated. Like South African is such a mixed bag of things, and it's also it has its own complexities. So to kind of find a place to fit in there is just yeah. So I think growing up, Congolese, there was very much the religious background. The diaspora is kind of centered around the church. You go to church and that's where you meet everyone. The cousins, and the gossip, and that, and then yeah, there's a lot of weddings. Honestly, Congolese people, there were so many weddings, guys. I had to miss so many basketball matches because there was a wedding on Saturdays. Like, and that's just like those are the spaces where we meet each other. The hair salon, church, weddings. Like that's kind of what it was like being Congolese. Yeah, and I think that there's also like a language thing there, because there's also like the same way English is the colonial language that we all need to learn to navigate this kind of world. It's French in Congo, so it's like, okay, I need to know French, but I also need to know like Lingala, but I can't know it really without living there or being constantly surrounded by people who speak it. And if I'm in predominantly white spaces, I'm quite separated from that. So I think that's what the complexity of it is like I'm also the last born, so I'm the most South African in the family, and so I felt the most disconnected from that. yeah, so I think just growing up and realizing, like, we all grow up and realize how traumatized our parents are. And it's like, oh, y'all are going through it. I'm so sorry. I was so mad at you. But you are going through it.
Like, you did the best you could with the tools you had.
You really did the best you could. I mean, you could have taught me another language, but you were doing your best. You were trying to survive. I get it. So yeah, that's also something I talk about in the show. And yeah, it's just, all the flavors and colors and complexities of trying to figure out my identity, which I've accepted will just be a lifelong journey. Yeah.
I also want to comment that I had a Congolese ex-boyfriend, and we dated for 2 years.
I'm so sorry.
He was amazing.
Whoa. No, I must say, no, look, we are attractive, I must say.
No hate.
Men
No, I
are
don't.
attractive.
There's a red flag, so I try not to do it publicly. He's a great guy. But, of the weddings part, I went to a Congolese wedding, and it was insane.
Oh, yeah.
Like the leputa, if I'm not like
Ooh.
the fashion.
Yeah, look. It's a vibe. I must say the weddings are such a vibe.
And I guess, Sena, you've spoken about being Congolese and then being South African, essentially both. And so, and while I obviously acknowledge that Africa is a big continent and there's a lot of differentiation there, but like, what do you feel that you wish South Africans understood a little bit more about the Africa story and where they sit in Africa?
I think we have, as cheesy as it sounds, like we have a lot more in common than what differentiates us. There's so many aspects of like various African cultures that are very similar, that I find similar with a lot of South African cultures as well. And I think it's just that I think generally the idea of immigration is so like worldwide. We're facing it worldwide. It's such a like, it would become very easy targets, very like great scapegoats for like making their country terrible. When it's about survival, like we all just want to survive. And also, I think this idea that they left to like, in a predatory way, as opposed to like, there was this beautiful, sorry, I'm gonna butcher this quote, because I don't remember who it's by, but it's this poet who talked about immigrants leaving, not like walking, but like essentially being chased, and like really having no choice but to just take everything that you have and leave. So I think it's this like empathy that I think is missing, that my parents want nothing more than to live in Congo. Like that's their home. They actually want to live there. And so for you to not want to live in your home, it has to be so bad. It has to be like, I cannot survive. And that is why you leave. And I think that context is generally missing. Yeah. And I also think that in terms of what we have in common is that colonization affected all of us, and it's still affecting all of us. The same things that are happening are just happening in a slightly different font in other countries. The same, South Africa also was rich in minerals. This was also a place that is attractive to colonizers. And that's what's happening in Congo. It's very mineral rich. And as a result, the West is like, I cannot get enough of this place. Will be invested in maintaining the chaos that must stay there so that they can keep profiting from that. So I think just to kind of take a broad look at colonization in general and how it affected Africa, I think will bring more of that empathy, because you realize the same thing happened to us, and them at the same, at different points in history. So yeah, I think I don't know if that I went very big there, but
no, you touched on so many points that I sort of want to zero in on, because I agree with you. We probably need a little bit more knowledge about our colonial and historical context. And I have studied the Great Lakes region in depth academically, and I could go on about the whole King Leopold era in the Congo, brutal. But I want to say, and it's exactly why, when we start speaking about Afrophobia, I think that link is missing between the greater context of colonization and how it relates to the stories happening right now. So my question is, from how do we speak about the conflicts happening in the Congo? What do you wish South Africans, first of all, what they knew about it and how it's playing out, and how we should be speaking about it publicly as much as we do with other conflicts?
Yeah. I think that when we see the colonial link to it, I think that's how I think we should start. It's like, where did this actually start? Because I know that me growing up, I also, before you become radicalized or like you learn more about stuff, like you kind of take in whatever stereotypes you're being presented with. And there was this idea that like, if Black people could just govern themselves, we wouldn't have all of this stuff happening. Um, and so I think that there is still a little bit of that happening where it's like there's this like stereotypical African politician that doesn't know how to run a country, with and completely ignoring who is profiting from all of that chaos, because that is the cause. That is what is happening right now, is that chaos is happening because someone is profiting off of it. And the grip that the West still has, on so many African countries, but it's the most evident in Congo, um, just has to kind of be traced back and say, oh, okay, this is why all of this conflict is happening. This war is not just a war for no reason. Someone is making bank. And I think that is the place to start, because that will contextualize Congolese people and see them as the victims of the circumstance, of this phenomenon that they are. And yeah, so I think just to kind of see that it's it sounds really dramatic and extra to say that we have a common enemy, but we do. The West is the common is like the person that, or the entity that is continuing to profiteer off of African people. And it's just happens to be most evident in Congo right now. Um, so I think that context is what would really help. And yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think that's actually a really great summary of the conflict happening there and why it continues to extend, and
Yeah.
why we're all so confused about what's actually happening there. It's just one story
Yeah.
over another, and actually nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And that is
And like
created by.
there is a history and a precedent of like using other countries and using other groups and all of that to kind of do their dirty work, or to hide behind stuff. Like the CIA has hidden behind a lot of stuff,
Patrice Lumumba, we will never
Patrice
forget.
Lumumba, for example, exactly, So the idea that it's just these two African countries that are fighting, when it's like, let's look a little deeper. Let's look at, who's invested in this. Who are they talking to? Who are they shaking hands with? I think that context, it needs to be, really looked at, because it is a David and Goliath story, and I think it needs to be just unpacked in that particular way, just from a decolonial lens. That's not just like, if Africa could just get it together, and just do better. And just look at imperialism and how that does affect us.
Yeah. Okay, heavy topic, right?
Yes, I realized. I was like, oh.
I'm just gonna pull us back just a touch,
Yes.
because we like to be heavy. We also like to be fun.
Yeah.
So you studied engineering at UCT, right?
Yes.
And then you made a total pivot to become like a full-time creative.
Yeah.
What happened there? And what do you wish you could tell yourself now that at the time of making your big pivot?
I can't say the pivot was, it was very planned. It was, I knew from the time I started engineering that I was going to go and be an actress. Like that was definitely the plan. I remember going to my dad with the application form for this film school and being like, hey, I actually realized that I really like acting and that's what I want to do. And he was like, I think not. This will not be happening. Respectfully, we did not send you to this private school so that you can go and be on camera. Excuse me.
We didn't survive colonization for this.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't jump the border for this. So, I understand now, especially like, okay, no shade. They needed the safety net. They needed to feel like, okay, we did our best for our kids. But yeah, I am the only child who very much lost born privilege. I'm the only one who got to go to a private school. So my dad was like, we didn't go through all of that. so that you can go be an actor. Yeah, and I think I had already applied or had gotten in for engineering anyway. And so yeah, it was just going to be the thing that I did. But I did, of all the like, acceptable degrees to bring to your African parents, engineering was the thing that I did enjoy. I really liked physics, and I can't say I loved maths, but I could do it. Um, and so I knew I was not going to go do business or law or medicine. Oh my gosh, I can't watch someone like be fake stabbed on a TV screen. There's no ways I'm going to be a doctor. And yeah, so I think that engineering, it was honestly really fun. Like undergrad was, it's not something that I could take back. I wouldn't go back and like undo it, but I have had moments where I was like, if I'd had those 4 years to just like, get started on my acting, get started on my filmmaking or writing, whatever, how far would I be by now? But yeah, it's life experience that I really do treasure, and I made like great friends and all of that. I think that what I wish I could tell myself back then is, girl, you are a writer. Like, I think that I took so long to internalize being a writer that I think I was scared of it for a long time. I was like, nah, I just write blogs. I just write songs. I'm not like a writer, you know? And I think that's something that I wish I could just, smack myself across the head a bit and be like, girl, wake up, you're a writer. Like, and that's fine. Like, so yeah, but I think that the going, like, I'm so glad that I decided to stick to it, that even after the 4 years, I was like, no, I still want to go and do that. It was really lovely. It was so fun. It was nice to study something that I actually intended on doing. That was a new feeling. I was like, oh, this is nice. Never felt this before.
Very
I'm like
nice.
encouraged and motivated to go to class.
Right, and the joy and the excitement that just like living in the thing that you
Yeah.
want to do brings. Oh, I feel you.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I've been thinking of this for 4 years and I'm here. I had actually got through it.
My brain is like breaking because I find so many similarities between like both our stories. I'm also a last
Oh,
born.
yeah.
I'm also
Uh-huh.
the only one of my siblings to attend a private school, so the stakes
Oh
were
my
high
gosh.
for that black
Woo.
excellence to pay off.
Woo.
I studied law, then went on to do my articles at like the largest law firm in the continent.
Oh my
And
gosh.
midway through my articles, it wasn't a conscious choice to pivot to me. I just looked at
Yeah.
myself and I'm like, I'm going to die here. Like I couldn't imagine doing it. And I think
Yeah.
I had internalized so many of those external expectations that it
Yeah.
wasn't until I literally like I had a burnout that forced me
Yeah.
to nurture my
Oh my
other talents.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
I think you spoke and you touched on exactly being in a private school and a predominantly like white private school.
Yeah.
Please tell me about that experience because I mean I have so much to say on microaggressions, but just briefly, how did you navigate those spaces from a Celine perspective?
Yeah, I think there was an adjustment because I went to a public primary school, the one that we all went to, and then private high school. So that jump was like, oh, oh my gosh, y'all have been living nice. I didn't know this.
This is nice. That's Tiffany Haddish voice. I felt like the Fresh Prince of
100%.
Bel-Air. I was like,
ooh, this is
look how y'all living.
Yeah, the smaller classes, all of that. I was like, oh damn. I think that there was definitely a bit of a panic of like, I think all the people pleasing tendencies I had was just like, okay, be just calm down, be a little, don't make a fuss about stuff. I think there was a lot of self gaslighting going on. If like I noticed a thing, I was like, okay, no, I don't think that's what's happening. No, and then like years later, I'm like, oh, that was racist. Oh my gosh. So that's what happened a lot. And yeah, I think it was quite rough. I think there's like an invisibility that comes with being a Black girl in a high school like that. And also like a pressure as well that, if I was like very high achieving and all of that, there was almost like we like you, we're putting you here, we're putting you in this position, don't say anything. Like don't make a fuss, you can't. I felt a bit trapped by how yeah, by being a bit of an overachiever, it was like, okay, I didn't like being, I remember really being so excited to leave and go and just be quite invisible in varsity and not have this like, I'm on this pedestal of the black girl, you know, the one who's done the thing. And I think that I did, when I started to really process and just be a bit more honest with myself about like experiencing racism and just kind of calling it out, I realized that it wasn't very safe for me to do it here, and I just wanted to be out of that, to just like fully acknowledge like, oh, this happened and that wasn't cool, that shouldn't have happened. But yeah, it was a lot of, a lot of hair politics, a lot of uh, not being too black. I'm sure my accent was affected by was definitely affected by going to the school. um, but it was also a very artsy school, so it was like relatively liberal, and it did nurture all the like cultural parts as well, which was lovely. But yeah, it was, a lot of suspicious things that you're like, oh, okay then, all right, that was kind of
Yeah.
racist. I wonder
Do
if
you?
that teacher's still employed.
Yeah.
you know.
do And Celine, do you have any like specific memories of any of those kind of microaggressions, things that really stand out in your mind?
Oof.
I'm putting you on the spot, and if
Um,
you don't have any, that's fine. There's often
I
Sena and I
do.
will have these conversations, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it was like this one time," and I always find those tangible stories so
Yeah.
relatable.
Yeah, there was something that was like a mix of slut shaming, and also I knew that this happened to me because it wasn't happening to like the white equivalent of me. Um, and yeah, there was like one, it was so silly, but I was one of the head prefects, and we had to do speeches and stuff. And we had to do speeches at all the like school events and all that stuff. And there was one guy who I knew didn't like me, but I couldn't figure out why. I was like, I don't know what I've done to like, this man just does not like me. Like, he'll find an issue with everything that I do. And so we'd all read our things. And sure, of course, like, I didn't know then that I would be a stand-up comedian later, but I'd put a lot of jokes into these things. Just like harmless stuff. Like, I wasn't like making any political statements in these speeches. It was all very, goofy. Um, and I remember noticing, like, the fourth time this happened, I was like, everyone's reading through their speeches, and he loved the two white the two white heads of school, and no notes, just like, you guys are perfect, flawless, everything. And then when it come to mine, it would just ruthless, 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 like, just like. And this happened a few times, and I was like, do you just not like me? Like, do you just not want me to speak? And it was kind of like a, throughout the whole matric year, I realized that I don't think he was happy that I was voted as a head prefect. And so at every opportunity he had, it was like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And it was always very harmless stuff. I had a boyfriend in matric, and he once saw us after school sitting on the bench on the field, like so far away. And he was like, oh, because you guys were holding hands, or my leg was here, or whatever. He's like, that was really inappropriate behavior. When like the heads of school were dating and were all over each other, like all over each other, and never got called out about that. And I was like, okay, something isn't right here. Like, this can't be. I wasn't actually doing anything. We weren't kissing. It was just, we were just sitting together. Um, yeah, and I think like at some point I picked up on the fact that this was actually, you just didn't like that I was black and popular. That's essentially it. He was like, he didn't like that people liked me, because he just didn't believe that I deserved to be in that position. So yeah, it was one of those things that I look back and be like, that man didn't like me, and it wasn't because of anything I actually did. It was, no matter what I did, it would have been a problem, you know. So
And
yeah.
I just think that, like, I'm listening to you and I'm honestly like, I'm getting so triggered because it sounds like
Oh
such
yeah.
similar experiences to me. And I think that's the problem with navigating these spaces, right? You are the
Yeah.
model Black girl,
Yeah.
and you are shape shifting at every single. You're navigating misogynoir. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
one of the boys in my class. I got body shamed a lot, but like by the white
Yeah.
boys, interestingly, in a very weird
Mm,
way, like saying I'm
yeah.
Sarah Batman because I have a big bottom,
Oh
and
gosh.
the over sexualization of sort of like Black
Yeah.
girls, and the it's almost like if you can't switch and be as respectable as possible,
Yeah.
the consequences for that, you're doomed either way. So it's a
Yeah.
very isolating place to be in, I'd say. Like
It
it's
is.
very
Yeah.
confusing.
It is. And I think like especially at that age you're getting hormones and you're getting like you're developing crushes and all that stuff and to kind of be I remember like there was a matric video going around or something and someone made a comment that was just so weird. It was like one of the I don't know, they made their own cut of the matric video and one of them said, "Oh, this girl, no, not this girl, no, not this girl," and then he was like, "Oh no, I don't have jungle fever." Like that was like a yeah, like a real
Oh,
a quote
jeez.
I remember, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like it was so blatant, and it was one of those like, "Oh, they're out and they're partying and they're drunk or whatever," but it was like it kind of confirmed the feelings that I had already, that like being into a black woman is like some special interest, or some thing that takes over you, and not, and that feeling of like, oh, I'm a separate thing, I'm a separate category of women was so, yeah, it just confirmed all those feelings of isolation that I had already, but I didn't, because it was never so blatantly said. It was like, maybe it's just me.
Yeah. Another
Yeah.
thing is the vocabulary to describe what's going through at the time. I find I really
Yeah.
lacked,
Yes,
because
exactly.
what drives me still insane is
Yeah.
looking to white counterparts and this plausible deniability. You're saying, but
Oof.
something doesn't feel right about that. But that
Yeah.
plausible deniability, and you gaslight yourself, and then you try maybe describe it to your black parent who has no experience in really navigating
Yeah.
white spaces. My parents were
Yeah.
raised in the homelands in KZN. Their only
Yeah.
option were to be either teachers, nurses, or a policeman, if at all,
Yeah.
or a taxi driver, which people will
Yeah.
make that joke about new people. But if you go to them and explain that, this boy at school says he doesn't have jungle fever, my dad is going to be like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Exactly. No, 100%. Yeah. So I think I remember my mom's, way of protecting me at that time was just like focus on being the absolute best. Like your thing is to just go there and be so undeniably good. The whole twice as good speech that we all get, like, and that it didn't solve that issue. It didn't like contextualize what I was experiencing. It was just like ignore that and ignore all of that and just focus on this. So yeah, I think it did definitely put like a hyper focus on my performance. That still is something I'm navigating now. Is this perfectionism, this like I must be perfect and amazing and whatever, because that's the only way that I can prove that I'm worth something. I think that is something that I don't blame her for doing that. And I think that that was just the best advice that she had for me at the time. And it did help me. I was like, well, it's fine. I'll just make sure I do really well in maths or whatever, but yeah, it was just like a tough space to be in. I think, yeah, the plausible deniability thing is absolutely it. Like when you,
That wasn't what I meant.
yeah.
No, but that's not what I meant. No, but you took it out of context. No, but you whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but you said it. Like, this is what you've
Yes.
said. Can we
Yeah.
actually just look at that? Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you spoke a little bit about there was a moment when you were dating someone in school. I know you've spoken about it in your comedy, saying that you dated a white boy at some point in your younger years. How did that shape your view of interracial relationships now?
That is a really good question. I don't think that I think because I was so young, it wasn't like that big a deal. And it was also like maybe the second white boy I'd liked, and I'd liked like 27 boys at that point, but so I always make a joke that I was like, I make a joke that like I liked all the black boys at my school, but none of them liked me back. But they were also traumatized. Like, I understand. They weren't looking at black girls. They were looking at, getting the white girls in the school. But yeah, I think that I didn't realize that there were some people who found that so strange, or the concept of it. I remember in first year, we had broken up by then, but we'd ended up at one of my friends' houses. And I mentioned this ex, and he was like, "Oh, that's weird. Wasn't that like a problem for you? Like, wasn't that a cultural issue or something?" And I was like, "What?" And then that contextualized my view of him and his relationship with like his white girlfriend. And I was like, "Oh, okay, so he's someone who would never step outside, of his race." Um, and I think that what that did contextualize for me is this idea of like the white validation, that I think like could be such a trap, that had to be such a conscious effort for me. And I think that it was just because it was the first boyfriend, so that was just like kind of a blueprint. And then kind of getting out of like, oh, whoa, I need to, because of all the rejection I experienced from every race of white boy, but in a white space, every race of boy, sorry, but in a white space, it could have primed me a lot more to overvalue, validation from a white person, than from a person of color. And like, that was something that I was like, whoa, I need to get out of that right now. Right now, we are getting out of this. But it has to be such a conscious decision. I think a lot of people don't get to that, or they get too scared, or they don't want to unpack where that comes from, to only look to white people to give you that kind of validation, like, oh, I'm worthy of something. And yeah, breaking out of that has been very, very liberating. But it can still, yeah, I think at that point I was very young, and I didn't really realize that's what was happening. Um, and yeah, so I think that's how it contextualized interracial relationships for me, is that, now I know right now, if I date a white person, it's not going to be that same, like, oh, they mean more than a person of color. Their validation means more than a person of color's validation. But it's still a cognizant, like something I have to be cognizant of. So yeah, so it is something that I comment on in Bad African as well, is like having a bit of empathy for the black boys in my school, who weren't looking at black girls or a woman of color, because for them the most important thing is that these these white girls think that they're attractive, and kind of having a bit more empathy for that, even though at the time I was very angry about it, and up until a few years ago still. Yeah, so I think it's like a different lens to look at it.
I appreciate how you have unpacked that, like even from like a romantic context, but it's such a
Yeah,
common Black experience, this sort of
yeah,
unconsciously wanting the white validation, right? I mean, I
yeah,
told Stacey this joke. It's not a joke, it's a true story. A
yeah.
few weeks ago of, yeah, having my 12th birthday party, inviting my white friends over, and everyone like, swimming in the pool, and my mom being on the phone, like I know her, like it to
Yeah,
anybody else, but just telling my aunts, oh, you should see my house is flooded with like little white girls giggling, and I know like she's pretending as if that's like whatever, but to her it's like
yeah,
such a status symbol that I'll never
yeah.
forget, like the glee. And I often make this joke that my mom is way more likely to forget my black friends' names than my white friends' names. I've seen it. And I love you, Mom. And this is not a judgment of her as a person. And you can completely, I have empathy. So I think at the time
Yeah,
when you grow up and you realize, and like you have your radical era, I'm like, my goodness, like, do you understand how you
yeah.
messed me up? Like, these are
Yes.
the type of things. If I bring home a white friend, your eyes would light up.
Yeah,
And it's the little things that
yeah,
children can't put their hands on, but understanding that it means a lot
yeah.
to their parents, right? Being able to
Mm,
speak English a certain way, and you want your parents to be
yeah,
proud of you. And
yeah,
and just watching her watch me when I'm on a stage doing a public speaking, and just knowing that for her, the fact that I could acquire all of this is social capital to for survival,
yeah.
something that she never got. So it's also taken me
Yes,
a
yeah,
journey to have empathy for that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Celine, I want to speak about how you get political in your skits, and
yeah.
how do you get, what are the responses across the racial lines? Like, what do people say?
That is a good one. So I think that the first overtly um, a political thing as a mockumentary that I made called The Wapidemic, and it was about it was about men's reactions to the song WAP by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, right?
Oh
Where
my
a lot of
God.
them a lot of them got on the internet and were all like, "I have a daughter, and this is the example of black women out there. They're over sexualizing themselves and yada yada yada." and just the hypocrisy of men rapping about women's bodies and having sex with women, whatever, and that being fine, but the ownership of women have over their own bodies. And I think that was a very interesting, like, I guess, barometer, because there were a lot of men who just commented just on, like, oh, this is good, as like, this is good filmmaking, and were so very careful to not comment at all about the subject matter. And then there were some who were honest and said, like, damn, I didn't think about this until right now. I didn't actually think that this is how rappers talk about women. And now I'm having to face this. So yeah, there wasn't like a big, because it wasn't like a big social media thing. I didn't experience that kind of like any hate comments or anything. It was just silence. I remember that because it was at the time that I just started stand-up comedy. And so a few of the stand-up comics, either he didn't understand the satire and flew over his head, or he didn't like what I had to say. But he was weirdly like hyper fixating on the men who were in the production of the thing and being like, he did a really good job on this. And I was like, okay, noted. But since then, yeah, there've been slightly more political stuff. So I made, it's still in terms of talking about sexism. I started doing these musical sketches, and the second one that I did, it was like a jazzy one, and it was meant to just be a small little thing. It was called "Take Petition to Take Smartphones Away from Men," and it was about, like, the Andrew Tate, kind of movement of, like, men just making terrible comments about women online and all of that, and the responses to take smartphones away from them. And then I got absolutely horrendous responses. Obviously, I was expecting people to call me ugly and whatever, because I was like, yeah, it's men on the internet. But then it started getting racist, and I was like, oh, okay, this I did not expect. And yeah, and then I had to actually turn the comments off of that. But then I ended up making a song about this experience called "The Bear." But then the first one where I got like a big mass response was the capitalism video, and that I think went viral because people were so angry that I was talking about capitalism, that I was linking it to genocide, that I was linking it to all these, like, cost of living crisis, all the stuff. People were so mad about that. And a lot of the responses were so funny, and it actually gave me a lot more content, and I appreciate them for that. But yeah, it was the first time I had an encounter with people feeling so personally attacked, or having their politics feel so attacked, that they are, like, willing to die on the heel of capitalism, and, like, how dare you criticize the system? Are you a communist? I had so many things of, like, you're a communist, you're a socialist,
Oh my gosh, not are you a communist?
No, like, straight up.
That's
like,
inherently like a dirty word.
Yes, and I was like, okay, sure, that does not offend me.
And Celine, the timing of that video, is that like the that recent one? How long back is that? Because I'm just thinking there's been so many people who are, well, certainly in the circles that I've been a part of, I just feel like it's becoming more and more, in this whole Trumpist era, it's becoming more and more acceptable for people to be more and more articulate about capitalism and their desire for it, but at the expense of so many other people, and certainly like support racism and that kind of thing, in whichever way you want to frame it. So was it within that same era?
So this was last year. So last year, July 2024 is when this video went out. And I was also aware of the fact that last year was like the biggest, I think one of the biggest global election years. Like, a lot of countries around the world were having elections. It just coincidentally. And so I think that a lot of people were already kind of tuned into politics a little bit more than they would be in any other year. And so because there's like such a right-wing movement growing, I think that there's also a lot of like a left-wing response to it and stuff. So a lot of people felt seen by it. A lot of people felt like, oh, this explains a lot. And a lot of people felt extremely defensive of it. And so I think the timing definitely was a part of it, because, I think in any other year, it just wouldn't have hit as hard. And you're absolutely right that it was so interesting. One of the comments was from a man who said, if you're not capitalist, you're gay. And it was
Wow.
really, it was really stupid.
Wow, how do we even start to unpack it? Where
So
do
I was
we
like,
begin? I could do a whole episode on that particular comment.
It's like that
Just
viral
that.
video. Why are you gay? You are gay.
Why are you gay? Like,
you are gay.
As I remember, I responded to him. I think I said, it's a good sign when you need to reaffirm your straightness unprovoked, you know? But like, I was still like, wow, this whole thing, because he had like people underneath, like also being like, yeah, you know?
Agreeing
I
with
am also
this
a
really,
straight man.
really completely incomplete statement. Like, makes no sense. I agree. Yeah.
But I think that it did kind of link a lot of movements together, you know, like a lot of like a hyper masculinity and like, you know, capitalism kind of going with a domination, you know, like narrative. It is about one over, you know, one person ruling over multiple people and all of that. And it was so interesting to see that. It always like stuck out to me as a very, how to like picture of society, you know, a little snapshot into how people think. But yeah, it was just acceptable for him to just say something like that and just be like, yeah, I will say this on my public accounts, and like that's fine. But yeah, it's a very interesting time in the internet where it was also like when the smartphones video came out. I don't know if Andrew Tate had been arrested by then or whatever, but like there were still like apologists on the internet because a lot of people were actually tagging him. Like they wanted him to see this and respond to my video. They wanted they wanted the satisfaction of him like owning, you know, this woman on the internet. And that I find that just very interesting and very well alarming. I'll say not interesting, just a little bit alarming about where we're at. But we're also seeing like I mean, America is a perfect example of like capitalism essentially being exactly what it is that I did describe. You know, the link to the politics and you know becoming a government that's entirely for rich men. And yeah, it's just rich white men, you know, and it's just very it's so blatant at this point.
It so
Yeah.
is. Capital, like literally feudalism and slavery walked so capitalism could run.
Like honestly, exactly that. And I think what I found very I think concerning was that a lot of people thought that I was American in this video, and a lot of people from South Africa said this is an American issue. So like, why in South Africa we don't have this? And I was like, oh, have you tried to find an apartment in Cape Town? Have you tried to find? Have you looked at like? And I've made a lot of mockumentaries. Oh my gosh, I think my brain thinks in mockumentaries. But I made one about the Cape Town royalty. It's called Cape Town Royalty Program, and it's about the cost of living crisis in Cape Town and how it's being built for rich Europeans to come and invest, and not and like the homelessness crisis is just growing and growing and growing, and people not seeing the link to that it's not just people not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, but like, you know, housing is being just built for foreign investment and not for locals. So I think a lot of times we're assuming certain issues are just American and not seeing the connection and not seeing how it's playing out here as well. So yeah.
Just speaking about some of the comments that we've had, you know, Black people, white people responding on your different videos. Have you ever found that there are, I mean, I don't know, is it like a bit of a double-edged sword? Like you have white people laughing at the wrong parts, like not seeing that that's actually, I'm making a political statement right now. You can laugh, but can you understand what I'm saying with these words? And I'm sorry, I just want to qualify one thing. I specifically called out white people on that because it's actually quite top of mind for me at the moment. I watched a video yesterday, a TikTok video yesterday, talking about the whole concept of Karen. You know, remember Karen?
Yes,
and how that was not an excuse for white women to jump on the bandwagon of also othering Karen. It was a look at, hey, can you see what's happening here, and can you see yourself playing out in this particular video? And that's what my point is. Are you seeing white people distance themselves from commentary that's uncomfortable and laughing at it without realizing, or do you see people actually coming to you and saying, hey, I didn't get that, but now I get it?
A little bit of both. So I think a good example of that is a few weeks, I think, after the capitalism video, I'd plan on just making sketches. And I did one that's relatively harmless. It's just about a white woman in a black hair salon, right? Because I'd noticed this a lot at my local hair salon, is that a lot of times there's like white women getting box braids and all that kind of stuff. Um, and so I made that video, and it was so weird. So I got a few comments from really earnest white woman earnestly being like, "Hey, I actually want to know, why is this offensive, or like how I cannot be offensive. Can you?" And I was meant to respond to it and I didn't. I feel bad. But there was that. And then also there was also one who was like, "Oh, this is me. Ha ha ha, funny." And I was like, "Okay." All right. And then there was another one that just completely missed it and was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is me because my daughter wants box braids for her birthday, so I'm gonna give her box braids." And like, "Oh, this is so funny." That was literally me in the hair salon. And I was like, okay." So I think there was like quite a spectrum of responses. There was, "I want to learn how to not be this person," and like why, like a bit more about the politics of black hair. And then there was like, "Oh, this is me. I do this as well. Oops." And then there was like, "Oh, yes, I am wearing this, and this is absolutely me, and I'm running with it, and I'm making no attempt to change. I'm just actually continuing." So that was definitely a very interesting spectrum of responses. That I think was quite disappointing, because I think humor is the vehicle that I've chosen, to make these political statements, and it is meant to like be teachable. It isn't meant to be like, "Oh, I didn't see it that way, but now I do." Um, and I think for someone to kind of see that and just take it as some sort of like imitation is the best form of flattery, as opposed to like,
Yeah.
"Hey, maybe this is how we perceive it."
Mm.
Yeah, was quite disappointing. But I also know that that's a possibility when you make art, is that some people are going to get it, some people are just not going to get the point of it, and that's just like the risk you take as a creator.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
And I think that and the ability to spark the conversation, no matter how that happens, is truly what's so
Yeah.
powerful, especially what's powerful about your content.
Thank
So
you.
Celine,
Yeah.
I want us to play a little game before we
Okay.
wrap this interview up. Okay, so I will give you a scenario, and I want
Okay.
you to tell me how an African parent would react to this.
Oh
And
no.
I want you to play too, because I want you as a mom, how you would react as a mom raising a white mom raising black kids in a white household. So both of you play, okay?
Okay.
So,
Okay, but okay.
get it?
I wanted
Okay,
to just
cool.
qualify by saying I'm going to like hand Celine most of the floor here, but yes, 100%.
Okay, I'm gonna start.
Okay.
Celine, tell me, how would an African parent react to "Shut up, mom"?
I'm just thinking, I would never.
I see you.
Okay.
I think that's the reaction.
That's the reaction.
Like, I think that's your answer. That is definitely
That's
the
my
answer.
reaction. That is my reaction. I'm just like, okay.
Okay,
It's
so
hard
that's
for
your
me.
reaction.
I'll try keep this. I'll try keep this in English. Just like it would be very much like, "Huh? What did? Excuse me? What did you? Who did you learn this from? What? I am not your friend. Which white children did you learn this from?"
Fire! I rebuke.
A demon inside my child.
Stace, shut up, mom.
Well, I mean, I would fall apart. Like that would never happen in my
Yeah.
household. But I can get the point that in white households, I think that's a little bit more acceptable. Nobody's gonna like it. I don't think white parents like that, but I think it is more
Yeah.
permissible. Yep.
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
sorry.
I'm moving on to the next one.
Heart palpitations from that.
I don't eat meat anymore. Celine,
Now
you're
look,
up,
I have
girl.
put my parents through this.
Have
And
you?
they're like, yeah, I have. Okay, one thing they would say is chicken is not meat. Chicken is not meat, so you can eat this chicken. But how are you going to be full?
How are you going to be full?
How are you going to be full? It's so funny. It's quite common, like in white households. That's part of the journey, right? That's the, hey, I'm now vegan, and now we've got lots of oat milk in the house. Those substitutes from Woolworths, all the meat substitutes from Woolworths. That is like totally par for the course of growing up.
Yeah. Okay. I will never get married or have children. Again, I feel like I'm trying. Your reactions are killing me,
Celine. Okay,
I'll
so
never
my
get married
parents.
and have children.
Ooh, again, I'm seeing myself in all of these statements. So like, I'm just putting myself. I'm just like, my parents have been going through it.
You've been putting them through it, girl.
I have been putting them through it.
Give them a break.
Okay, first of all, when you meet the right person, you will get married. Marriage is a holy thing. It's a godly act. You must get married. Children, what are you going to do? Who's going to take care of you when you get old? Yeah, that's the main one. No, when you meet the right man, you'll
you're
have
just
children.
saying that now. Yeah,
you're just saying that now.
You'll
I understand it's scary, but when you meet the right person, you will. Yeah, that is the. I'm literally just listing off of memory the things that I have heard.
Relatable. I've put my parents through this too. Stays up for you.
I don't know. I guess it's go and live your truth, my child. Go and explore the world with all your heart. Do what you want. We're here to support you and we love you. No, you don't need to get married. It's all a choice. I don't know, all of that kind of stuff.
So, okay, last one, but this is not a statement. It's more of a scenario. Okay. I'm into emo punk.
I don't know.
You know, the devil comes in various forms. And we need to pray for you, my child. We must, on Sunday, I'm going to tell the pastor about this, and we will pray for you. We'll pray for you.
It's so funny. It's so funny. I don't know. Emo punk, I don't know what it is, but I love it for you. I love it. Do you need me to buy you some black nail polish? Will that help?
It is satanic. It is demonic.
Well done to both of you. I think you've given some very accurate reactions. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna just kind of wrap us up by actually congratulating you, Celine, on your nomination for the Comics Choice Awards in the category of Source of the Year, which is really, really cool. Exactly.
Thank you.
So guys, we're gonna put a link on here if you want to go through and vote for Celine. We would love that. She would love that. We would all love that. So Celine, we have a little thing on the show where we ask your opinion, and if I put you on the spot, that's okay. You can get back to me, right? But who do you think would be a good guest for a show like this, where we're talking about race, we're talking about privilege, and we're trying to find personal stories that make an understanding of this topic more relatable, so that we all discuss it as a country rather than keeping it in our siloed groups? Do you have any thoughts for us?
Yes, I think someone like Gugu actually on TikTok would be a good. She changes her username a lot, so I'll get the username. But she actually came to my show as well. She came with her partner Jade. They're really great. I think she'd be a good one. She also studied law, also Model C High School, studied law. And yeah, really lovely and very outspoken, a lot more confrontational than I am. So I always admire people like that. I think that,
I think that's good though. One is good. Yeah. Unless you have any others, that is super.
Yeah,
cool.
I think.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So Celine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I know Sena has, because I've watched that smile on her face the entire interview. So it's been really great having you. And yeah, thanks for joining us. So guys, until next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Live life colorfully.